Today I want to show you how to build a Lambretta engine. In the end of this video you will know how to build a standard Lambretta engine, but you will also know how to tune a Lambretta engine with some tricks and also some parts, for example this Casa Lambretta tuning cylinder. You may wonder why I'm talking in this strange English. The reason is very simple. I needed some assistance for this video, and so I went to Italy to get some assistance. Here we are at Rimini Lambretta Center, and next to me is Lorenzo and Mickey from Rimini. Ciao Lorenzo.
Hello.
Ciao Mickey. What are we going to do, and why are we going to do it with you?
We are going to build an engine with some tuning parts, and we want to show the tricks and how we do it.
This engine is ready, so we remove it and start with our own new engine. Okay. Of course, for a Lambretta engine we need really lots of parts, and I brought parts from Zipp and of course a lot of Casa Lambretta or Casa Performance parts. We have a casing, we will use your cylinder, and here we have a lot of small parts we need for the engine, and we use your multispline. We have a very shiny kickstart, we have our crankshaft, and we have our Zipp ignition. Here's something very special. It's a prototype of a new Zipp exhaust. Casa, clutch, a lot of parts, but we will show you step by step. What part should we start with?
Let's start from the casing.
From the casing.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the first step you do when you build a new engine?
So we check transfer, if it's clean obviously, and then we start with the engine mount and the bearings.
When we start with this case, I have one problem. Yeah? Because I brought this crankshaft because I love it. It's our 62mm crankshaft. With the 62mm version there is a little problem. It is bigger than the standard one, and so it needs to be machined. Okay, this was really quick. How you done it? You know, this crankshaft has a diameter of 99mm because it has 62mm of stroke, so it needs bigger webs to stay strong. But this is also a good moment to say something about the casing we use. It's not an original casing, and it's also not one of the very luxury Casa Performance casing. It's an Uni casing. It has a bit more diameter, a bit more material. We'll see whether everything fits as we like with the Uni casing.
We are going to put the rubber mounting.
So usually we warm the casing and
Yes, of course.
down, without tool.
Without tool. That was easy. Very important about these engine mounts, they have 3 holes. They mostly have some letters in here that say left or right. This one is for the right position, and this one is for the right position, and there is also an arrow that should point to the top when the engine is mounted. So what is your, how do you position the right hole, the 3 holes right?
Normally I fit these 2 holes flat on the surface of the cylinder kit. When it's on the scooter,
Okay.
the arrow will point the top.
If you take this, one hole is pointing to the ground, and you make a line with the other both holes and the surface of the gasket, right?
Yeah.
So let's do the other side.
And then we are going for fit the bearing. Over there.
Okay, usually the next step would be mounting the bearings, right?
Yes.
But in this case we don't want to mount the standard cylinder, so what we should check are the transfer ports.
Yes.
We have your SS 225 cylinder, and when it comes out of the box it looks like this. You see the gasket fits the transfer ports, so we can put it over here and check what's the difference. What would you say? Do you usually grind the transfer ports to make it fit exactly?
If I'm not building a race engine, I leave the engine as standard.
Okay.
Yeah, we prefer to have more contact, surface contact to be sure there are not air leaking.
Okay.
Usually.
Mostly it doesn't matter if you take away this few millimeters.
No.
It really depends on the stage you want to do with your engine. For a race engine, okay, enlarge everything you find, but this should be a touring or sport engine.
Yeah.
So we leave it this way. So what we do next is
Bearing.
perfect. The next thing to do is the drive shaft bearing. Great. Oh. The last bearing we have to put in the casing is the primary drive. Already in, okay. When you mount this little bearing, there's a shim under the bearing, yeah. And Lorenzo did this as a weight on the bearing because if it's getting cold again, the shim might become loose, right?
Correct.
Okay. With this one, it doesn't.
Maybe we can fit the mag flange.
About the mag flange, there's something special because we have it here. This is also from Uni, the same company like the casing, and we're going to assemble it. But we want to show something new because this is the shape of the original casing. Yeah? But you have something new. Originally, it's like there are two seals for this bearing. One on the outer side, here's the ignition, and here's the seal, then the bearing, and then on the other side there's also a seal. In between, to lubricate the bearing, what is in there?
Grease.
Greece. It's not the country in the southeast of Europe. It's like oil,
Grease.
but it's grease. That's simply grease. You put it in there and it lubricates it if you're lucky. If you're not, it won't. Originally, there's a seal. People who want to use it with higher revving engines take out the seal, grind little slots to make the oil come to the bearing. Okay, some say it's a good idea, some stick to the original solution that also works, but I also think it's a bit better with the oil. And Casa Performance.
This is the new version of our Casa Cooler, was made CNC. We have made it casted, so the price is a lot lower to the public, and we have kept the same advantages of the first version.
It is also casted like the original one. It has a very similar shape like the original one, but it has the different lubrication with slots that lead the oil from the gas oil mixture towards the bearing. And this also helps lubricating the bearing. But this is a sample. They don't allow me to use it, so we use the only one.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a little...
Yeah.
But don't you use a little...
Yeah, the L-shaped...
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
To mount the mag housing, you need 5 things. The outer seal, then this funny little thing to make the right distance between the seal and the bearing, and then the inner bearing, and last but not least, you need the circlip to secure everything. But I think you have a different way to mount it. Is it right?
Yes, because I don't want to burn the oil seal when I warm it, the mag flange. Yeah. So I start to warm with bare without anything inside, and then when the bearings start to come in, I very fast try to assemble it and then to leave it to cool down. Also, you have to put the bush inside the bearing.
This is cool. That's why I'm here, yeah, to hear something like this. It's a good idea. Put the bush in the heated bearing, then the bush is also heated, and you can easily fit it on the crankshaft. Very good. now everything is assembled. Sealing, spacer, bearing, second sealing, circlip. Important, the spring should always show to what you want to seal. Yeah? For the outer one, it wants to seal the grease, and this one wants to seal the oil and gas mixture from the crankcase. Now, what we are going to do now, I think we should grease it.
Yes.
How much grease do you use?
Normally, not too much. You don't have to be full of grease, but you need enough to ensure that you can make thousands of kilometers.
There's a lot of grease, but it's not completely full because it needs to have the opportunity to expand a bit.
And then normally when I fit this, I fit only the T-shaped bush,
Yeah.
not the bearing. I put the bearing when the shims of the gearbox are okay.
Lorenzo showed a nice trick to keep this warm and put it on here immediately, but as we're doing film, we spend too much time, so now it's cold again. So let's heat it up and put it on the crankshaft. Also very important information, if you use the flame for this small part, it could destroy the heat treatment of the bush. So Lorenzo prefers heat gun,
Yeah.
the hairdryer. Important is to have this special tool that makes life much more easier. You don't leave a gap here.
No.
Next thing is gearbox plate. How do you call it?
End plate, yeah.
End plate. Doesn't fit.
Zip.
When you mount this end plate for the gearbox, there are 6 screws or 6 nuts in the bolts. And here are little, I'm missing the word again. Dean knows.
Dino!
Locating pin. Okay, locating pin. So, thanks, you were very useful today. You're just jealous because we have their striker. Okay, these are pins called locating pin, and they keep this end plate in the right position because here are bearings in this plate and there are also bearings in the casing, and of course they need to line up perfectly. So there are 2 locating pins. Problem could be if the casing heats up, the locating pin could walk through the end plate and then it falls out into the engine. So there is a special trick to prevent it, and it is, Mickey?
Hammer.
Okay, now there are little dents around the hole. Now can't find its way through the hole. Even so, this is not as tight as it should be. This prevents the locating pin from falling into your engine casing. Now there is a bush for this bearing, for the secondary shaft. And Lorenzo told me he usually use a press,
Yes.
a hydraulic press,
Yes.
because it has to be lining up perfectly. But most people don't have it at home, so there is a solution for home use. Yeah? If you're not a professional, if you do it at home, you need at least to have some special tools like what we show now.
Job done.
Next step is we're going to mount the gear selector mechanism, and we have this part from MB, we have uni casing, and we have this gear selector fork, which is new. But problems you will always have with parts from different suppliers. They are all good for themselves, but if you add them together, they may not fit. In this case, the problem is this area here is too thick. If I try to mount it, it touches the casing here, and I can't fit it. So what we have to do is grind it a bit here. Is there a special measurement we need, or just by feeling?
Feeling.
We grinded the gear selector fork and we found out the problem is the casing. Because the casing is not worked proper in this area, at least not for this kind of gear selector fork. But now it fits and we can assemble it.
You need normally fit the shim on the lay shaft, then the O-ring.
First one shim, then the O-ring, and some grease. You also use this, I love this, it makes it much more easier. Yeah. Spray grease. Ah. Then you need to fit this on the inside. I should have left this to Lorenzo. How do you position it properly?
I normally position the fork against the bearing, the last gear position, and then align the gear lay shaft go in on the closest position to the shock mount.
Here is the mount of the shock absorber, and this one should be, the arm from the lay shaft should be as close as possible to the mount of the shock absorber. This thing is the mount of the shock absorber. Usually here is the shock absorber and this is the mount, and the arm should be as close to the shock absorber as possible, while the fork on the inside hits the ground of the casing. Right?
Correct.
We need a screw. I think we need a screw. Ah, I have a
I
special
use this
screw.
one. I use this.
But Lorenzo, don't you mount these little stones before?
Yeah, normally fit it before, yes.
So the difference between what Lorenzo and me using is I have this little screw with the Allen key and with some Loctite on it, and Lorenzo uses this one with a Torx key, right? And of course the Torx is more durable.
Yeah.
And yes, so we take your solution.
Thank you.
Perfect. Now we need to ask Sticky what's the name of those fucking little stones is. What is the English word for those?
Pawls, P-A-W-Ls.
Holes.
Pawls.
Poles.
Pawls.
No, we need to mount the poles. The poles are those little stones for the sliding dock. You made your own poles.
Yes, we use a lot because we build engine every day, so we are very close to the company.
But in the end you wanted to have a very good quality.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Because sometimes if you get from the aftermarket they are bent.
They are bent or they are not hardened.
It's a bit tricky because you need to use those very, very tiny circlips. So these are the circlips you use. Very good. With the gear selector fork, later we want to use a 5-speed gearbox. So that means there's very few space for the gear selector fork. What is important when you mount it to have enough space to shift to every gear?
Yeah, in this case, with this engine casing, there are the two slots allowed you to go very close to the bearing. In a standard engine, you have to grind a little bit the fork.
And this fork is also grinded on the upside?
On the upside, yes, forward to the first gear, yes, but not on the fifth gear. If you fit on the standard engine, it's better if you grind a little bit.
This case, this Uni case, has 2 slots. An original casing doesn't have these 2 slots. And when you go to the 4th or 5th gear, you have more space for the gear selector fork to go down to the 5th gear. And this one is also grinded on the upside, so you have more space to go to the 1st gear. When you have a 4-speed gearbox, it's not that important, but if you want to mount a 5-speed gearbox, which I would always recommend on a Lambretta engine, it's very important to have enough space to go to the 1st gear and the 5th gear. Okay, so next step is...
We are going to fix the oil seal on the hub bearing.
Why put this steel plate under the holding plate?
So it's like the standard engine, but it retains the oil seal
to pop out.
Yeah, and also it protects from the dirt of the shoes brake, from the dust.
Thus, the bearing has to be in line with the surface.
No.
Many people when they do it the first time, they struggle from, oh no, it doesn't fit, and then they use more force.
Probably the bearing come out from the other side.
That's why sometimes, always, you find the big plate bent.
So, Okay, perfect. What next? Do we finish the gearbox first or the brake?
Yes, no, I fit this one for fit the A shaft and make sure the bearing is not coming out.
Yeah.
So gearbox, we are going to fix the sliding dog on spring, the other ball. We align these two with the ball slot. Olé.
Now it's assembled. It's much more easier than, for example, on a Vespa small frame.
Yes.
Next step.
Next step, O-ring on the lay shaft. Is another difference between the Vespa and Lambretta. Normally I select the neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first step flat on the top is the first gear. The second step is the neutral.
Okay.
Now we have to put this pole in the sliding dog. Primary bearing.
We are using five-speed gearbox.
Yes.
Usually there's a shim between the primary drive and the bearing. But if you use a 5-speed gearbox, there is no shim because there's not enough space.
Yes.
When you try to shim the main shaft, it's important that the main shaft is completely detached to the bearing. Lorenzo and Mickey made a special tool to secure it. They put it on the main shaft and screw it down. If you do not have the special tool, most of you won't have it, you can also take the hub, the brake drum, and mount it to the main shaft. But of course, this is a good idea.
So, to be sure I'm going to fit in the correct way, I use the sliding dog. Every gear should be flat.
Between the first and the second gear, of course, as you all know, is a neutral gear. This is the first gear. So that means that the sliding dog may not touch first or second gear when neutral is selected. And you can check it very easy this way. If you turn it now, it must turn without touching one or the other gear. So next is the shim between the main shaft and the bearing, right?
Yes. The bearing.
We mounted the gearbox. Now we need to mount the end plate and to check the clearance, right?
Yes. We can start with the 1.0 millimeter and then we look if we are too tight or we are loose.
Okay, perfect. We have different shims here. Yeah, we have 1.4, 1.2, 0.8. But from experience with a 5-speed gearbox, we can say, okay, let's try 1 millimeter, see how it works. Yeah, that's what we are doing now. You're mounting it with 3 nuts,
Yeah.
just to check it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we choose, for example, 0.1, 0.15 millimeters.
So it means 0.15 is the right clearance for the gearbox?
Yeah. And we put between the shim and the end plate, very close to the bush of the secondary lay shaft. But at the moment we are too tight.
Okay, that means we take it off again and try another one.
Yes.
So this is an important tool for this kind of work. In Germany it's called Fühlerlehre, in Italiano
Spessimetro.
and in English you can see here in the video the right English word, and when I see the video I will also learn the English word.
So we are going for the 0.8.
So a bit more clearance and check whether it runs like it should. Okay. Here you are, 0.15.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds different, also moves different. Much better. So we take off the end plate again because we need to fit the bearing.
No, we fit out from the outside.
We fit from the outside, much easier. Perfect. Let me add some comments for the 5-speed gearbox. You may have seen we didn't take the Casa Performance gearbox, we took a different one. The reason is not that the Casa guys doesn't trust their own gearbox. Of course they do. The reason is I brought another gearbox. I also trust the Casa Performance gearbox, but there are a couple of different gearboxes on the market, and we didn't want to use only Casa parts. We also wanted to use other parts, and I think it's very cool of those guys that they say, okay, let's also use other parts to show what's on the market and not to make a Casa commercial or some. And so in this case it's the AF Racebeat gearbox, which also works very well. I think the Casa is very special, very high quality, very durable. Now we have a AF Racebeat, and I think it's also a good pick for this engine.
The circlip, now I can fit all the 6 nuts. In the gearbox end plate, I prefer to use the higher nut.
When you fasten the end plates, I would recommend not to use this kind of washers, or because they do not really work well. I don't use them at all anymore. And also Lorenzo suggested a different kind of washer. It's thinner and it's bent a bit.
And in the space you gain without this one, you can fit a higher nut instead of the original one. So okay.
So these washers are higher than the one Lorenzo uses. With this one, he can use thicker nuts to make it stronger.
You have more thread.
More thread, and so you can use more force to tighten it. And like always, very important at Lambretta, what are you using?
Loctite.
Because if those will fall into the engine casing.
It's very common also on a standard engine.
Yeah.
So I prefer to be secure
And you always need to watch the height of the bolts and the nuts, because otherwise they may touch the clutch.
crown. Ole.
Okay. If you like, you can use a torque wrench. It's the way to know exactly what torque you use to fasten it. What torque should be used for those nuts?
15 Newton meter.
For the drive seal plate, we take something special. We take the Casa version. I explain you why. This is the original drive seal plate, and you see it's a simple piece of steel. There are also versions made of alloy. Only the Indian engines had an alloy version. Don't use this, because the alloy version may bend and then it's not sealed anymore. Casa Performance has an own drive seal plate. There are also others on the market, but I like the Casa Performance version because it's also alloy, but with an O-ring. The O-ring keeps it sealed, and it's lightweight alloy, so it's a good solution, and we take yours.
We are going to fit the oil seal with grease.
Lorenzo puts in the seal, and of course you need to watch to do it in the right direction, and always do it from the back side, because from the front side it's not possible. There's a little recess, and to keep the seal from going out. What should I do with this one? Throw it away. Okay, throw it in the bin, because originally you take this and put it on the bearing, and this is to make the plate to seal right, the original version. Put it on here. It seals between the bearing and the plate. But now we have the O-ring, so that means we doesn't need it anymore. But if you have the original one, don't forget this. And when you mount it, it's always very important, like Lorenzo did, to do it this way around, that you can read Casa Performance when you take off the crankshaft. Now 4 screws are needed to fasten the plate. And of course Lorenzo uses Loctite, because if you lose these screws you won't get very far anymore. But of course I will also tell you what is originally done. Originally you use a driver to seal it. You put this plate in the case, and then you make with a driver you make little dents to prevent these screws from unscrewing themselves. But this is the old version. The modern version is Loctite.
I screw it like a cylinder head.
Yeah, like a cross. Yeah.
is very important because the plate is never flat on the surface. Okay.
Now we can see the result, and it's very simple to see. It's fastened.
Okay.
Ah.
Now,
When you put in the crankshaft, be careful not to touch the oil seal here, because you may destroy it or kick out the spring of the oil seal, and then it's not sealing anymore. So, but it's pretty easy. You just need to be careful. To pull the crankshaft into the bearing, of course, a professional tool is the best way. But in case you don't have this tool at home, you can use the original sleeve and the bolt. Lorenzo, do you want to show us how to do it?
yes. Now it's important to align the sleeve to the spline of the crankshaft. Now, if you look, is solid.
Yeah.
I have to go back.
You feel it doesn't move anymore, and then don't use more force or more power. So loosen it a bit, and then you turn until it
And
fits to the splines.
Yes. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, that was easy. What is the next step?
We fit the back flange gasket.
So when we fit the Mac housing, of course we need to seal. And this is the original type of seal, it's paper. And when you fit a paper seal, what do you use?
Every time I use some sealant, a dry fitting
Yeah.
of the flange, because sometimes now we have a new engine casing, that is not problem.
Yeah.
But if you are rebuilding a very used 50 years engine, sometimes you can have some trouble.
Okay.
It's important to look if everything is going on place.
Lorenzo made a dry build to check if everything works out fine. And what's the result? Works.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Of course, we need to fit the gasket. Originally, there is a paper gasket, and you use some liquid gasket and you put it on the surface.
Yes, both surface of the gasket, and then I fit on the engine.
But today we also have here our new version of this gasket. It's alloy with rubber on it, so we don't need anything to put on the surface because the rubber should seal. When you mount it, the bolts are not symmetric, so there's only one way you can put it on. Very important, this flat spot up here has to be pointing towards the cylinder. So if you remember this, it's very easy to fit.
I put some grease also. If I have to rebuild the scooter in the future, it's easy to.
Ah, very good. If you use grease on the flange and you destroy the engine in the next weeks, it's more easy to take it off again. So now we put nuts on the 3 bolts, and the 3 other threads are not used now because we need them later for the ignition. Lambretta uses a lot of 6mm threads made in alloy. So that means a torque wrench is very useful, especially if you're not so familiar with rebuilding Lambretta engines. If you don't have it, it takes some threads. You destroy it until you know how to fasten it. If you have a torque wrench, you do not need to pay for this.
Normally the torque I use is 10, 11 Newton meter on every M6 bolt or nuts.
And Lorenzo also uses, in this case, nuts with a nylon inlay,
Yeah.
because they fasten
It's more
themselves.
safe. Yes.
Now we turn it around again. Cylinder.
Studs.
Lorenzo uses a special tool because it's a professional workshop. But when you do it at home, the easiest way to do it is take 2 nuts, 8mm thread, then you take 2 13mm spanners, tighten them, use some Loctite. Grazie. And so it's very easy to mount it. Okay, then we'll take it off again. But now we proceed the professional way. Beautiful. Next step is mounting the piston. It is a zip crankshaft, 62 mm, and in the box there are two bearings. Yeah? The difference is the width of the bearings. And we can check which one we need. What do you think?
The large one.
This is a small bearing, too small. We simply take the larger one and it fits properly. A bit oil to lubricate it from the beginning. For mounting the pistons, you need to mount the circlip. And this is a special modern circlip, how it's always used in modern pistons. But mounting this is not really fun.
No, but of course I have a special tool.
A special tool? With this special tool it seems to be very easy. Lorenzo's life usually is very easy with all the special tools, but unfortunately today he has to do this video and we want to show it how to do it if you do not have all the special tools. And this means we need to do the usual way. Oh, okay.
Screwdriver.
This was very quick. Okay, next we are going to mount the cylinder. Before we finally mount it, we need to check the squish. We put on the gasket, now without any liquid gasket because we want to be able to remove it. Also the piston rings we add later. As we have 62 millimeters of stroke, we need 2 millimeter more or thicker gasket. So we have a 2 millimeter gasket we use under the head. Before we add the head, we take some tin and put it on the piston. We already shown in different videos. This is to measure the squish. Okay, nuts. 2 nuts are enough. And now we need to turn the crankshaft. Now we take the head off again and check the tin. 1.3, 3.5, that's perfect, that's what we wanted to have. That means we can take the cylinder off again and mount everything properly. Zack. We use some liquid gaskets and the piston rings. Do they have a direction?
Always I fit with the letter mark.
Okay.
But
doesn't need to?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, perfect.
I put some oil on the ring and on the piston. Liquid gasket.
So when you use silicone-based liquid gasket, it's very important to use it very thin because otherwise it will go in your transfer ports. As we use the Casa Performance cylinder, we need to have this bigger shims or washers as a distance. This nut has the right height for the air cooling. Of course it is here. What's the right torque?
22, 25. Normally I use 22.
Perfect. Never forget to take the longer nut here because otherwise you cannot fasten your air cooling. The Casa Performance cylinder has 3 additional small screws to secure the head a bit better. Okay, the next step is the reed valve. I like it, very short. But you have also a different version. What is the difference?
The difference, the CNC will not fit the SS. It's only for the SST or the SSR.
Now Lorenzo is fitting the reed valve. In case you are using the original cylinder, the manifold will go to the left side. With the reed valve, the manifold goes to the right side. Okay, next step is mounting the exhaust flange. And there are mainly two types of exhaust flange. The original one looks like this. It's oval and has two bolts. And then there is a round exhaust flange. This is used on, for example, TS1 cylinders, Monza cylinders, and also on the Casa Performance SS cylinder. This is why we take this one. There are also other types for other cylinders, but they are not so common. So many exhausts offer both kind of flanges.
I use copper grease. The gasket will not remain on the cylinder or on the manifold.
So there's always very few space for the spanner. So you need to take an open spanner. You cannot take the
T-bar.
Exhaust flange, check. I think first of all we mount the front sprocket and the CAS drive. Before we mount the CAS drive, we need to install this. It's only for the oil, right?
Yeah, also to prevent the dirty part of the clutch and gearbox go in the bearing. It will destroy it. So it's a safety for the bearing.
For this sleeve, the CAS drive and the sprocket is on this sleeve. Casa Performance had a special idea for this sleeve. If you want to see how to use this, you can skip the next 2 minutes, because first of all, of course, we want to show you how to mount the original sleeve. We put on the sleeve and then
sprocket.
Then we take this part from the CAS drive. You see, if I turn the sprocket, it goes up and down, and then I take the spring and the upper part from the CAS drive. And in the end, it's all mounted with this screw. Originally, it's two parts. It's a washer and a screw, but I would recommend to take a modern solution where it's all one part. It's much easier. Okay. Now it's getting a bit difficult, because there are teeth on the sleeve and on this top part, and of course they have to align. And sometimes it's a bit difficult to make them align.
With our spring, it's easy because it's harder, but it's shorter.
With the original spring, sometimes it's really annoying.
I have a trick if you want.
Oh yes, yes, I want the trick.
Okay, you can go very close.
So what Lorenzo is doing at the moment is, the problem is the teeth from the sleeve and from the upper part are on the top of each other, so I can't go on screwing. And to check if they are aligning or not, you can use a hammer and you feel, does it move or not, right? In this case it doesn't move, so I loosen it a bit, and when I now take the hammer, you see, it moves a bit. So the teeth are aligned and I can fasten the screw. This screw is very, very important. Always take Loctite. Yeah, it really may not fall apart. We don't use the original part anyway, because we use the Casa Lambretta solution. Okay, ich glaube, wir machen Mittag, oder? Es ist 1:05, die wollen los. What's different with the Casa solution?
So the main difference is the bolt, because the main bolt now is shorter, because this sleeve has inside a step. You fit the sleeve onto the crankshaft, and now you fit all the parts. Basically, it's the same.
The same, the sprocket, the cam,
the spring, and the cap.
and the cap. And now the difference is At first we have the same problem, it doesn't align, but it's much easier to solve this problem with this cap. Perfect. This was much quicker than the first version, I think, especially because it's easier to see whether it aligns, and then you can put the cap on and tighten it.
Also, the biggest advantages of this is when the cam goes out and compress the spring, the end of this travel is the cap. So every time the cap push on the bolt, on the main bolt, this one try to get it longer and come loose. With this system, we'll never have this problem.
And I think on this nut you don't need Loctite because there's the pressure of the spring on it anyway.
Yeah, and also is a 80 mil thread, so you can tighten very hard.
Next step is the clutch. But didn't we have the clutch in here? Oh. Okay, we prepared the clutch. But before we can mount the clutch, it's important to add the chain.
Firstly, we need to align the two crowns without the chain, because we need to measure.
Okay, easy. So in this case, we also use a Casa Performance clutch. You can use a lot of clutches on the market. Thankfully, today we have a lot of clutches. If you want to improve your original clutch, be sure you're driving original LE 150 cylinder. In case you don't use it, buy a good clutch. Don't mess around with these cheap alternatives anymore. We are not in the 80s or 90s anymore. We have good clutches on the market. This money is well spent. The problem is, before you mount the clutch finally, there is a chain between the front sprocket and the crown wheel. This chain should align exactly between those both sprockets. How can we check this?
So, we need to measure the distance between the gasket surface and the crown. If you don't have at home a vernier for deep, we can just put a steel on the side and measure
the depth with the vernier.
Yeah.
This sounds easy, but the problem is, it's Lambretta, so we have a problem. The sprockets, the front and rear sprocket, usually don't have the same width. So we need to know what the width from the crown wheel and the sprocket is.
This crown wheel is 15.3 and this sprocket is 15.50. We need to align the center of the sprocket and the crown. So we don't have to only measure from the side, but we have to calculate the center of the crown.
And how we do it? We take the measurement, take the half of the measurement and add this to our depth. In this case, we have here 15.5.
Yes.
And here?
15.3. Who cares?
Okay, who cares? But of course we want to, usually the difference is bigger and we want to show you how to make it correct. For example, if it was here 40 millimeters and here 60 millimeters, the half of 14 is 7, the half of 16 is 8. So this one, the upper side of this sprocket needs to be 1 millimeter deeper than the rear sprocket. Then the chain is in perfect alignment. So now we demonstrate how to measure it.
.2.
Okay.
22.8.
This is 0.6 millimeter deeper, lower than this one. So we need to lift it up 0.6 millimeter and then it's perfectly aligned because fortunately in our case both sprockets have the same height. There is this little shim between the clutch and the bearing. How thick is it?
Is 1 millimeter. Now we fit 1.6.
By chance we have 1.6 in our hands. Okay, so 0.6 millimeter more than before. Add the clutch and measure again.
It's the same, 22.2, of course. 22.2.
Perfect. So you see, it's very easy. With the Casa system, you need only 3 people. The chain, where's the chain? Never ever take a cheap chain. Yeah, it fits. Next step, of course, is to tighten the clutch. In the case of the Casa clutch, we have this holding tool. You put it on here on this on the inner basket, and you put 2 6mm screws in the casing, and you see it's blocked, can't move. And then you take the washer and
Special nut.
the special nut. You take the nut and tighten it with 66 to 47 Newton meters. But I want to show you what is the original way, because we have a very special clutch. If you have original clutch, you have this tool. It works the same way. You put it on the inner basket, put in the screws in the case, and then you can tighten it. With the original, it's a bit different, because you have a special little sheet here that will secure this nut. I don't know if you still need it, because you can also simply use Loctite.
Yes.
I prefer Loctite anyway. Okay, so, very good. Washer, nut, Loctite, and a torque wrench. If you want to tighten your clutch or also your cash drive and you don't have any special tools, the best solution is buy a special tool. The second best solution is you can take a screwdriver and block the chain in here, and then the clutch or the cash drive cannot move and you can tighten it. Of course, this is only in case of emergency. It's fastened, so we assemble it. We take 8 very strong springs. 10 springs are possible. You can choose between strong springs and not so strong springs. And then we take the clutch plates. Next step is to put the discs into the clutch. It's always good if the discs are not dry. We've put them in some oil. Okay, now we have, thanks a lot.
So with this clutch, we can just bolt the screw in,
Yeah.
but if you have an original clutch, you need a tool to compress the spring.
It's not easy. If the engine is in the frame, it really sucks.
Yes.
So one way is to lie it on the floor.
Yeah.
The other one is to use a special tool, but the best way is take a proper clutch.
Loctite.
Loctite. Sure not to have oil on it before. Loctite.
Now it's important when you screw it, the clutch plate have to be aligned to the basket.
Otherwise you will bend them.
Yeah, you can damage it.
And now we need the torque wrench again, but this is something for Lorenzo's fingers.
So 7 Newton meters. Okay.
Now the clutch is mounted, the cash drive is mounted, the chain is in the perfect alignment. What do we have to do now?
Now you have to fit the clutch plate. In this case, as we use a GPDL cover, side cover.
Yeah, we should show the difference, just a moment. Important to know, the type of pressure plate you use depends on the side cover you use. This one, with this little nipple on it, is made for the LI special whatever side case, and the flat ones are made for GP side case. We use a GP side case, so we use this one. Bam. The next thing we have to mount is the chain tensioner. Originally, it's 2 parts. This is a slider, this is a chain tensioner. The slider is on the downside and the tensioner is on the upper side. When you use the original ones, it's important to mount them before you put the clutch in. But we don't use the original one. The original one is also secured with this little tap washer. You screw it down, put the tap washer on, and then you bend it around the original screws. The problem is the original chain tensioner is good for the original engine, but for higher revving engines and stronger engines you shouldn't use it, but because it won't last. There are many companies who offer better chain tensioners. One of those companies is Casa Performance. As we are at Casa Performance, we use your one.
Okay.
In this case, we use the Casa Performance chain tensioner, and it's possible to use it in two ways. As original, tension it upwards, but sometimes you need to use a longer chain. In our case, a 81 link chain because of the combination of front and rear sprocket. So it's easier to tension it downwards, and that's possible with your one.
The base, always with Loctite, the strong one. The important thing is you don't have to use the original guide, the lower guide, because it can cause serious damage.
And instead of a tap washer, you can use Loctite.
Okay, now we fix the tensioner.
How do you see if it's hard enough or not?
Normally I let the chain have some play.
When you fasten the tensioner, check that the chain can go 5 to 6 millimeter up and down, and then fasten it. Okay, perfect. Yes, very nice. Now the whole gearbox and clutch and cash drive is assembled. Now we can close the engine case. So Lorenzo and I, we are going to have a beer, and Miki is going to explain this.
Grazie, Mickey. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say something general about the side covers. There are a couple of different versions for LE1, LE2, but the most important thing is the most common covers are 3rd series and GP. And you can identify them easily because it's here deeper. It's not a straight surface. The important thing between LE, the side cover, and GP is the kickstart mechanism. On LE you can mount this thing, and this little ramp will bring your kickstart back in position. On GP you don't need this because you have the same ramp, but here on the end plate for the gearbox.
Yes.
The next thing is you have here a different tab for the clutch. This is a GP type and it fits in here. I would recommend to use a GP type because this works much better. In our case, we didn't take the Casa case. The Casa cover is also very high-tech, very well-working case, but we took a seal case which has bearings for the clutch arm made by LTH. So first we have to assemble the whole thing because the kickstart piston or plunger is to be fitted into this sleeve.
The seal clip. After you fit the seal clip, you need to fit the plate to the bottom, then the spring inside the piston and fix it inside the kickstart shaft. Then the pin gives the movement to the piston.
So it keeps the kickstart piston in place, but also moves the piston in the kickstart shaft, because with this pin can push it back if the kickstart is not used. So this is very important.
In the original type of this piston, you use a 6 mm spanner to tighten the bolt. Especially on GP casing, sometimes this piston, when it's not engaged, touch the first gear. To solve the problem, you can add material by welding on the piston or change with the specially made piston with a bigger diameter. So when the kickstart is back, this piston is more far from the first gear.
I think it's also a problem you often have when you use a 5-speed gearbox, because it's maybe half a millimeter higher or some, and then these little teeth will be attached to the first gear, even so you don't use the kickstart, and this will make a terrible noise. So if you use this pin with a bigger diameter, it pushes back the piston a bit more far, and this doesn't happen. So we use this one.
Same Loctite, but not too much, because sometimes happens when the Loctite come out and go on the pin.
Doesn't move anymore.
Yeah, so you have to strip down the side casing. Now we fit the oil seal on the casing.
Yeah.
This always with the spring inside. When the oil seal is fitted, we fit the spring. The spring brings back the kickstart shaft. So there are different ideas on it, because one part of the spring is bent inside a little bit. We put it inside the casing, the part is bent. Push it down. A little bit of grease. To fit it, you have to align this part of the spring with the hole in the shaft. Easy. Then, with the help of a screwdriver, you have to push the spring all inside the kickstart shaft. Be careful to don't turn out the lip of the oil seal, and twisting a little bit, you push the kickstart all the way down.
Now the shaft is secured and everything's fine.
Now we fit the stop for the kickstart shaft, some Loctite. And if you don't have a 12mm Allen key, you can use a ship wheel nut and a 12mm spanner. Job done.
Kickstart mechanism is finished because we have a DLGP side cover and not an LI side cover. So next thing is the clutch arm.
Yeah, next thing is prepare the parts for the clutch arm. First thing is to fit the shear clip on top. There is a cut just at the end of the teeth. And O-ring. You fit inside the side cover until here, because you need to fit another shim and another scissor. This one is the lever move the plunger to pull the clutch. Lever in, turn it inside, smaller scissor, and then little bit of grease, the plunger inside.
And the arm we will mount in the end.
Yes, because there is a position, there are the splines, so you can fit it in the different position. So usually I fit it when the side cover is fitted on the engine.
Perfect. Next thing we're going to do is to close the engine.
Yeah.
But first of all, we need the studs to be mounted into the casing. Right?
Exactly.
Important not to forget, if you use not an original exhaust, you might need to add different studs to these threads.
So some Loctite in the threads.
As you want to use a special exhaust, we leave out these 3 bolts.
Yes, exactly.
Are these already fastened? Now we need these little locating pins.
1 and 2. Now we fix the chain gasket. We give a little bit of grease, so if you have to take it off, it's easier. When the gasket is all the way down, we can fix the side casing. Let me check. Now, to fit the side casing, we need to turn the kickstart shaft just after this ramp. Washer, nuts.
So now the engine is closed. One thing I would like to add is this little circlip here. Yeah? We took a version with these 4 little fins. The original one doesn't have it, but these days those are easy available. What is the advantage of these circlips?
It helps to make a bigger surface.
For the shim?
Yeah.
So it helps to keep the shim in place. It's a very little part, but it's worth it. Next thing is kickstart.
We start with the rubber.
So when you mount the kickstart rubber, sometimes it's not easy to mount it. The best way for rubber is silicone spray, but you can also different kind of grease. It's not very dangerous that it might fall off because it's a stopper for the kickstart. So the kickstart is holding it in place anyway. So next part, kickstart.
So normally the position is like here, because if you use it in this way, when you go back, the plunger will break it.
And there's not enough tension on the spring inside to keep it in place, and it will start to dance a little while driving. The problem is here are multiple splines, and you can choose the position. And you need to find the right position between too high and too low. If the kickstart is too low, there's no tension on the chain, and it may break the piston from the plunger. And if the position is too high, the problem is that the plunger will be not back in position and will touch the teeth of the first gear while driving. It's a task to position it in the right way. Now we think we didn't find the right position between the both teeth. So what is the solution?
We can try another kickstart, because sometimes the position of the teeth are not always the same in the different suppliers. In this case, the Casa Lambretta one can be okay because the position is nearly correct. It's just a little bit higher than the rubber bump stop, so can be the correct position.
Okay. So the correct position is the stop should be in the middle of this alloy part where the bumper is in. And now it is a lot of on the upper side, and here it's too low. So one thing we might be able to change if people don't have at home assortment of different kickstarters. Is it also possible to shorten the rubber?
In this case, we have to make it longer because we need to touch early on the kickstart. So maybe we can put some washer between the side casing and the rubber. From the outside, you change the position of the kickstart lever.
In our case, we try with the different kickstart.
Yeah.
Okay. They're both nice. So now we mount it. Okay. It doesn't match the bumper completely. Is this bad, or can we use it this way?
No, normally is very common.
Every lever is a bit different. With this one, the stopper is a bit short, but it works, no problem. The difference between the GP version and the alloy version is the thread in the kickstart. The LI version or SX or whatever has a nut outside here, and this one has a thread integrated in the kickstart lever. Now we are going to mount the oil drain plug, the oil level plug, and the oil breather plug. Honestly, we had to look for the right English words. Yeah, if you use this, it's easy to find the right English words and also to find everything else you need to know. It's a good book. The oil drain plug has a magnet here, so it keeps collecting little iron things you forgot in your gearbox. The oil level plug is mounted here, and here you can check the oil level. That's why it's called oil level plug.
And when you fill it, it gives you the right quantity of oil you need in your engine.
The third one is the oil breather plug. It's mounted on the upside, and it's for air to come in or go out. If it's hot inside, so it's air goes out and then it goes back. These are the original versions. That's why I shown it to you, because we will use some better versions as we think, because we also want to show you what is on the market available and what can be done. For oil drain plug and oil level plug, we have taken the zip versions. They both have magnets, smaller magnets, but very strong magnets. They have it also on the oil level plug, so you can also collect something. And it's also possible to put some wire through here to secure it. It's important on the racetrack. If you like to race, take those. And this is the oil breather plug with a filter, and it's made by Salem Speed. I like it, it looks good. Where should we start? With the oil drain plug?
Okay.
Do you need to know the torque for this one?
With this one, no. But sometimes with the standard one.
When you push too hard, when you use too much torque, then it might break.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have an Allen key in here, and it's pretty small. And if you push too hard, if you use too much torque, it might break. So be careful. Oil level plug. So now we mount the oil breather plug. Okay, that was pretty easy. Now we can mount the brake. This is very good. Lorenzo put a sticker on it, no oil. When you mount the engine, you may not forget to put in oil. And here is also the kind of oil and the amount of oil you would recommend.
Yes.
500 milliliters?
Yeah, on our engine, this is the sticker I put on the new engine when they go out.
I think if you ask 10 Lambretta experts for the amount of oil that should be in the engine, you will get 10 different answers.
Yeah, probably yes.
But good to know, because I know your engines are running, so 500 milliliters and they're reliable.
Yeah.
So 500 milliliters of 80W90 oil. That's what you prefer.
Yes.
Now we are going to assemble the rear brake, the brake shoes and the cam. And it's very good that Lorenzo is next to me, because there are two different types, Li and the other one is GPDL type, and I always confuse it.
There are few differences. Something you can swap it, but something no. If you use the brake shoes of the DLGP version, you need to use also the DLGP cam. But the pin and the system of retain, basically you can swap it. So it's not very important. You can choose the Li version with the circlip, or you can use the DL version with the wire.
Okay.
It's not a problem. But if you fit the Li shoes, you must have the correct cam.
Perfect. So what do we start with?
We have a Li version cam.
With a little grease?
Yeah, I have
You use
greased.
grease?
Yes. There is a shim underneath. As you can see, there is a mark on it. Normally the mark go outside towards the hub.
Okay, maybe Mark can show the mark. Haha, funny. And it needs to point
Outside.
outside or to the back.
I remove the retainer for the gearbox. Firstly, I fit the pin. Normally they are two wavy washer. Lock tight.
So the difference between Li and GP at the boards is the length
Yeah, the length.
and the retaining system. So if you have GPDL, you simply take this wire and clip it on both bolts. Doesn't work here. And if you have the Li version, you take those funny things.
So, this is my way to do it. Clamp on the cam, I'll lift it outside, and then I go back.
Very easy way to do it, very cool, but only possible if the arm is not
It's not
mounted.
fit. Always, I prefer to fit the arm before fit the hub, because if you pull it, the lay shaft can go in, and you are wrong space here. So before you mount the hub, it's better to fit also the arm.
Maybe I can show my way of mounting it. No, for this I need screwdriver. So what I usually use is some copper paste. So don't use grease at your brake. Some copper paste here, and here, and also here. Of course, what Lorenzo showed is the fastest way to do it. But if the brake arm is already mounted, I do it like this. Put this one on here, and use it as a lever. It's also pretty quick, but of course, you're right. If it's not mounted here, you're much quicker the way you showed it. Okay, for the brake arm, first we need to mount the O-ring.
O-ring, washer, the arm, you keep the cam in place.
For positioning the brake arm, it's a bit difficult because it has multiple splines. But you need to choose what's the right spline to mount it. And it has to be as far back as possible, but you mount it with this for the cable. I put it in backwards for testing. And you may not touch this edge. So when you turn this backwards, the arm, it must be in alignment with the pulley here. So when I put it here, this touches the edge and it shows up to this point, not to the cable. So I turn it around and now it's very close, but it still touches here. Now I go up one more and now I can mount it aligning. So this is the right position.
Circlip.
Perfect. Now we are going to mount the brake drum, the rear brake drum. And first I show you the original system. Originally you have the drive shaft, then you put on this shim, then there's a cone, and here you can see there are 6 splines that are also on the brake drum, and on the other side of the brake drum there's also a cone that fits on this one. Then you put the brake drum on and fasten it. Very simple, but in our case we didn't use the original system, we used the Casa Lambretta system. And the reason for that is very simple, because Miki and Lorenzo said if I want to leave Italy in one piece, we need to use the Casa system, right?
That's true.
No, there's also a reason why you have our own system.
Yes, the old system is difficult when you are on travel to unscrew the rear brake drum because you need an extractor, and sometimes the cone comes loose, so you damage the teeth of the lay shaft. We don't want this, we want to make it in the easy way possible, so we have a multi-spline lay shaft as a modern scooter. Is simply you.
But for this one, you not only need a different lay shaft, you also need the different brake drum with multi-spline.
The brake shoes are not in the center.
Ah, yes, what happens always. So now we have a problem. The brake shoes are too big or not in perfect center, so I cannot fit the brake drum. This is a problem we have very often these days. It depends on the brake shoes, but also the problem could be caused by a bad machining of the case. So this is a problem many of you will find. What is the solution?
We can try to rectify the brake shoes. We have an original tool modified for fit the multi-spline octopus lay shaft.
This is an original tool, but at the moment there are different companies working on special tools to do this. There are different versions, some you have to use by hand, some where you can put an angle grinder on. At the moment I think we have only one tool on our homepage, but you can also watch at Rimini or us and we will find special tools in the future for this. Ah, perfect.
A special nut because the thread is bigger than the original.
The original is 16 mm, yes. The thread on the multi-spline is 18 mm. The Lambretta studs, they have 2 different threads. One is
10 mm, but is left.
A left-hand side thread. That means you need to watch this when you mount it, but the advantage is if you fasten the nut on the rim, it doesn't get loose. Then there are also 2 different lengths available at the market. The original ones are shorter. These are original, they are shorter, and these are longer, and they are made for the one-piece alloy rims from Zipp and also from other companies.
Loctite.
So I think we should use 4 studs. Here it's possible to use 8 studs. This solution is called Octopus for 8. Originally it's only 4 studs, but if you use 8 studs it's stronger, simply stronger, and of course you also need a special rim to use it. So first we use only 4 studs, then we can use every rim. Perfect. Now it's easier to block the drum. What is the way you use to block the drum?
If we are on a stand, we have made a tool with an old rim. You can fit in the position, hold the hub on the scooter. You can do it with your weight or with braking and everything.
Okay, and now we are going to tighten this with the right torque.
160.
Say Santa?
160.
160 Newton meters.
160 Newton meter. Okay, you could see this was a lot. This is a very important nut. So we didn't use Loctite for a special reason, because we don't need to. Lambretta has a special system to secure this nut. Usually it's a kind of shim with only one hole. We have a version with 3 holes from Casa Performance. You have 3 holes in every Lambretta brake drum. Not every, there are very rare ones with 2 holes, then you need another shim. And put it on here, and if you're lucky it fits. What are you doing if you're not lucky?
You have to continue to tighten. It's important. You have never to go back, always forward.
Always forward, never back. Simply, if the holes, if they don't line up, simply torque it harder. But the screws, to secure the securing mechanism, you to use Loctite. Also very special screws.
Yeah, they are longer, this one, because this plate is thicker.
Okay. But anyway, it's with an Allen key, and the outer diameter is smaller. So if you're missing this screw, you always need to order the special screw for this purpose.
Yeah. M7 Allen key, they are not common.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. What we have to fit next is the ignition. We won't set it up, the ignition, because we have enough videos where we show how to set up the ignition. We link it here, we link it there. We're taking this wonderful ignition made by Wapel and for ZIP. First of all, we need to mount the stator to the stator plate. And next step is the cables. There's a hole in the Mac flange, Mac housing.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, of course.
Woodruff key before.
Woodruff key before, very good suggestion. Do we have a Woodruff key?
Yes, I have it.
On our crankshafts, the slot for the Woodruff key is always very tight. But this is on purpose, because we don't want it to move. You just need a bit more force to get it in. And of course there may not be any edges or something. Okay, so we put the cables through here. And it's also not possible to mount it in the wrong way, isn't it?
Also, the cable make it a strange way to go out. So.
Okay, and then bolts. Here are this little plate prevents the cable from touching the flywheel, if you're lucky. And it prevents this bolt from being easy to install. Okay. Next thing is the flywheel, or not the whole flywheel, because we need to assemble it later. There is a special tool for mounting. It's very important, but I forgot it. So it was my fault. We have to think for an own solution. This is a special tool for the clutch. No problem, we can use this, perfect. Okay. You always use this kind of washer?
Yeah, very similar.
The nut. It's also left-hand thread. So especially when you loosen it, you really need to remember. Okay, do you know the right, Mickey, the right torque?
68 to 75 Newton meter. Another thing to remember is you need to have a left-hand torque key, because this one is not.
But we can pretend it. So, mounted with the perfect torque. But it's very good to know that this is a really cool special tool. If you miss the original one, is the Casa Performance clutch tool. You can use perfect for this purpose. Now we add the part that makes the flywheel a flywheel. Here there is already some Loctite on it, so it's very simple to use. It's this one, I don't care about torques, this really has to be tightened. Okay, bam. What are we doing now? What is it, Lorenzo?
You are fitting the wire of the stator plate.
And we have these little plates to keep them in place. And important to know, there are two different types of plates. One with a big hole and one with a small hole. This is for the most Lambretta scooters original, but the one with a bigger hole is from Lambretta GP Electronic and Indian type, which is much better if you use a modern ignition because you have bigger or more cables.
More cables.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
With this one, it's nearly impossible. Also important, you see, the hole is not centered, and the big one has to be closer to the frame to keep the cables away from the moving parts in here. Now we have two of them, one on the downside, one on the upper side, and between there's a rubber, and when you mount them together and press them together, it's sealed. The problem is it will be impossible to put this one on both strings. So what are we going to do?
We are going to cut it. We have to fit the first plate. Okay, it's already in place.
Yeah, it's also the right direction. Okay, then the second one.
I don't know if it's very important for you or not.
Yeah, there
no,
is
the
a
gasket.
yeah.
The gasket. If you want to install the plates, it's very important not forget the gasket first. Last two main things we have to do is the cooling
Yes.
and the linkage. I would suggest first add the cover here, and in this case we chose a black one. There are different types of coulings. Most of them have two rings here. This one has only one. That means it is GP. GP and Indian GP have only one ring. Also the Spanish model Cervetta, but the ring is more on the outside. It's not symmetrical. Okay, anyhow, this one needs a couple of screws and some rubber to prevent it from rattling. In here there are 4 little rubbers, and it's important to install them from the inside so they cannot fall out. In this kit there are little washers for the screws that are bent a bit. What I use usually are these little safety washers, and they have like really lots of little teeth, and they are also bent a bit to give a bit tension to the screw. And this is very simple part, and you don't need Loctite and you won't lose it. Last thing for the cooling is the cylinder cowling. Fortunately, we found a white one. No, at the moment we only had a white one. And we see immediately the problem. If you use not a standard cylinder, if you use any kind of tuning cylinders, especially if they have a reed valve inlet, it won't fit. So what do we have to do?
We have to cut it.
You have really cool marker pens. I like them. Just need to check if it's in alignment with the screws. No, it isn't. Same rubbish all the time. Or is there a different way you do it? No?
This is the way.
This is the way?
This is the way.
Okay, I marked it here, and
For the eye, usually I cut it a little bit. I have to mark also in the other side.
oh, the other side is okay.
Yeah, but I have to go up for sure.
Okay. Okay, so Mickey cut it, and now it suits perfect. It was only 1 hour with the angle grinder. No, perfect. It took 10 minutes. So now we can mount the missing. Okay. Cooling is mounted. Perfect. Lambretta snobs take both cooling parts in the same color. we prefer black and white.
We have to do the linkage. To go out. The kickstart.
The kickstart. Okay. So let's mount the linkage and the cable adjuster block. Which one do you want to start with? The cable adjuster block.
Yeah.
Okay. First the gasket. Then we take this. This is for the rear brake cable to stay in place. And on top, in this case, we have a cable adjuster block from MB. And take some Loctite here. Okay. For the linkage, there is also a gasket. In this case, we use the Salem Speed because there is a kind of bearing in here, copper bearing, and it's made pretty precise. This one kind of rod connects the arm with the linkage. So you need to be careful when you combine different parts. The good thing is MB decided to take a thread and a nut here because the original system is very complicated. It's with a circlip and it's very complicated to edit and not very reliable. So this is much better.
Then the long cable nipple. We use this wire just to be sure to not lose the cable nipple.
The zip cable nipple fits very exactly in the holes, especially at the Salem Speed. It doesn't move and it can't fall into this hole, and it stays exactly in place to install the cable. From here, when you look from here, you can see exactly the hole for the cable. That makes it much easier to install. And you need a 4mm spanner. Original is a 3mm spanner, which is a bit thin. So that means we are nearly finished. The last thing we need to add is the clutch arm. Nicky, what is the right position?
So the clutch arm never have to go on front of the 90 degrees because it goes negative, the movement. So have to be always like this. So when pull the clutch, arrive not over the 90 degrees.
So just a moment. If it's attached to the clutch, it should be about maybe 30 degrees far from the 90 degrees axle. The reason is it should loosen the clutch at exactly 90 degrees because it has the best lever to work.
Circle it.
I think we are finished because the exhaust we are going to mount when the engine is in the frame. Of course, we also need a carburetor. There are different solutions. You prefer Del Auto because you have the most experience, and Del Auto carburetor, you can adjust everything. This is fine. This fits perfect to this rubber. You can also take Quadrini or Mikuni. Many people prefer Mikuni carburetors because they are simply shorter. And on a Lambretta, you always have the problem that the side panel is in front of the carburetor and there's very few space. It works like this, but if you want to have more space, you can also take TMX Mikuni carburetor, or very seldom used, but a very good carburetor is the PWM from Kaihin. So it's up to you.
I think
okay.
The job is done.
The job is done. I have to say, in general, it was really fun to work together with you, but it wasn't always fun to fit this engine because what we've done is we took parts from many different companies. We took parts from Seal, from Uni, from Zip, from Casa Lambretta, from Casa Performance, from MB, from Salem Speed, from
Skotopia.
AF Race Speed, from Skotopia. Sometimes it happens that they all refer to the original parts and have good ideas what to change, but these good ideas might not fit together. These are problems that you will always also find at home when you build your Lambretta engine and you have to rework some things. This already happens to you, and it was the first time we did this combination for both, for you and for us. You guys were very cool to agree to use also parts from other companies and to show how it works to mount it. Not everybody would have done it, but it was really fun to work with you, and I personally was able to learn a lot from your knowledge. So thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
thanks a lot Lorenzo, thanks a lot Mickey and Rimini Lambretta Center. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and we see you at the next video. Bye.